go in here and we put it on wire shelves here for storage, and then we bring it in when we packing up. And here we need similar things. A conveyor belt is convenient to roll the basket here all the way to the person here that takes it on the wire shelves. And then we have a tape trolley to take it out like that, some kind of simple trolley. Sterile store is also needed, of course. We store the items. If we use basket, we use the basket racks that we see here to put it on instead of running. If you use containers, we normally use deep wire shelves. If we use loose packages, that is used sometimes, and that can also go in wire shelves, but can be a bit more narrow. And this is placed close by to the sterilizers, of course, next to the sterile disposable store. We have sterile dispatch here. The items we used is, of course, sterilizer trolley that we load out from sterilizers, the basket rack that we mentioned, the baskets, and the wire shelf with the containers. And when we're going to assemble, we get the order from the operation. We're going to have a hip surgery, for example. Then we need to find the items somewhere here in the sterile store. We have a assembly table that we see here. And then we take a simple trolley, and we go and pick up the items with that actual surgery. And we assemble that on the table here. Put it on a trolley, open trolley or closed trolley. And then we bring it out just in time for the next operation. Any questions?
So the storage,
No.
The storage.
all the sterile material, you can have any other storage. All the materials.
Good question. Yes, here we have a sterile storage in the CCT, but you might have it at the OR at the customer. If you have it at the customer, this place can be smaller. So where I come from, but the CCT there, they actually have a quite big store at the OR in Karlstad, meaning they have a quite small store here. That's a good question that you can transport more frequently. The size of this store should be about 2.2 to 2.5 times what we produce per day. It's recommended. If we are below that, we need to go out more frequently to the customer, and we might store it to the customer or some kind of other storage. So production of humming basket is interesting to see the size of this store. That is something I try to calculate so I know how we fulfill the recommendation or not. And that size is given by the calculation that I will show later here, our calculation tool. So that can differ in size. Then sterile store, the recommended 1200 millimeter between the basket racks so we can work properly with the baskets. We cannot put the basket rack side by side so we cannot enter it like that. It must be some gap here. And if we have limited space, we can send it more frequently to the customers we discussed. And we can have lockable pass-through cabinets if we have night time, and we can lock it if we have problem with that someone is taking the items. We can have some kind of storage here, and you can have key for that. Sterile dispatch, that is where we assemble the items. We have the trolleys here that is going to the next OR. That is next to the sterile store and the corridor outside, of course, so we can come out. And we have either open trolleys, we can also have closed trolleys. Closed trolleys can have keys so we can lock the items. I had a Brazilian hospital that wanted this closed transport trolley. I don't have it here, but they had a problem that when they were performing the operation, someone was taking the instrument to a different surgery. So therefore they discovered the close trolley with the key. The key was probably given to the nurse, so she had the key for that trolley. Because otherwise they had not the proper instrument that was taken away. That is what can happen. And especially if you go outside like a super system, then you really want to close transport trolley because it's covering that kind of open that we see here. So that was that chapter about the design. There is happening some trends in the world, in the CSSD, TSSU area. And this is the trends that we have noticed that we see here. Centralization is probably the strongest trend, that we sterilize in one spot, but the CSSD and not up in the OR. We'll go deeper in that point later. The washers, we go to electric heat washers. I heard today that it's very common here in South America that we mostly use electric heat, not house steam. And that is for sure the trend in Europe as well. But that gives a bit longer process time, 10 to 20% longer process time. And internal drying in the washer is highly recommended, so we don't recontaminate the wet goods when we take it out from the packing area. Move a wet goods in the packing area to the drying cabinet. It might be contaminated when it's wet, and you must actually do a risk analysis of it according to an ISO-EN law. 14483, I believe it is. And we do see more central dosage that we looked before. Systems, so we have detergent in one spot, pumping it to the CSPs. Instrument containers is more used today, much more, and that is for the instruments to protect that. They are protected better than the paper that might break. It breaks the paper. You might postpone the operation if you can't find that set together. And the card washer is increasing since we have more containers. They cannot pipe into each other. They are very bulky. There is about 4 to 6 containers per washer in the big washer to wash them. So we do need more card washer. And the environment with height adjustable tables, ergonomic, is becoming more and more important. We see that we can lower the table, sit down, or stand up working. And automation of the washers and sterilizers that we automatically load in the wash cloth in the washer, or things to the sterilizer. And traceability system that we have barcodes on each basket, so we know how many sets we have each. We might have 5 hip surgery sets, then we see that in the computer, and we have full control where it is, if it's washed or not. And less reusable dressing sets in the patient and surgeon is also a quite strong trend in some countries, that disposable is cheaper to throw it away instead. So first, it's been quite common to wash at the OR, but now we move over to wash at the CSSD, centralizing. We do it in one spot. And we do this because the cost efficiency is cheap to do it in one spot. We utilize and washer more. And we also have some demands from authorities with traceability. So we can actually see if somebody gets sick, the traceability system prove that it was a good process, it was approved that process. We can go back from the patient back to the system and look that it was approved, it was good. You can see even the temperature curve in sterilizer and washing. And center of excellence, the nurse is well trained, she knows exactly what she do. And the operation nurse is at the wound health surgery where she's really skilled at. She might not be so skilled at taking care of the washer because that's not the daily work that way. And the operation planning and traceability system that can be connected. So when we're going to do an eye surgery, we can order that set from the operation, from the CSD, and that can come just in time. So we can put that system together. We for just-in-time delivery. We get much larger CCD in this way. All the machines in the hospital is in one spot, but it's cheaper to service them there. So service technicians only go to that spot. And we need to optimize the goods flow, so side by side, as we discussed, or using elevator. Soil elevator, down from lower, clean elevator up, to get the flow like that. That is even more important when we have more goods like that. And the documentation system that can solve this traceability and quality assurance demand from the authority. We can prove what we do in a better way. And we should get less investment since we buy probably less machine that is working for more hours and not standing empty of the OR. And the quality should go up since we have staff that work daily with the same thing all the time. Super system we see in some countries, very local trend. We have a truck driving from each hospital into a super center in the middle that take care of everything. Wash and sterilize, it's really a factory. That is mainly in UK, Netherlands, France, China and Kuwait. We found this. So some countries think it's really good and some do not like it so much. So it's really local trend, I would say. So the reason for doing this might be that they work too little in each plant. So for example in Scotland, where we see in Glasgow, they did a super system, they see here, 4,000 square meters, using 6 hospitals that drive the items to the reception here. They have closed transport trolleys here, and very large washing disinfection, index washers, 50 packing people working here, and sterilized barrier. So they actually had a very low usage of the plant they have, and that would be very expensive upgrades. They went to change to the super system. And they get the economy of scale, big production, and they can actually outsource in-source responsibility. There is some companies that do that, like what's it called? Yeah, some company take care of that. Synergy, for example, is one UK that do this. So this is of course possible, but not if we have this problem. Then we should probably skip it, since we do need to get all the instruments all the way to the system. We must purchase much more instruments. And if it's here, it will probably take a long time to get in time to that spot. So in this case, this is India, by the way. I heard from my Indian salesman. I think it was Calcutta. He recognized the place. So. India. Yeah, yeah, and storage. So in this case, probably not. We should avoid it. If we would go for it, if we have good communication, and that is, we can have about 30 minutes drive with a truck, something like that, 30, 40 kilometers, as in this case. Then we get very big CCD. They never close. They work every day of the week, 24 hours, probably 7 days a week. Much more soil goods to one spot. And we do need to optimize, basically not too long to drive here. And we place this in the middle of the hospitals, so we get as convenient as possible here. But we must check the investment of the instrument. How many instruments more do we need? That's probably quite a lot. That is very expensive, as we know, with the instruments.
Is the solution
The green? No, maybe not. You would drive much more. So not so green, no, that's true. Local sterilization may be more green solution than using trucks to drive around. True. So disadvantage is more instruments is needed and dangerous goods on the road. So we need close transport trolleys. to protect items if it drops from the truck down in the pavement. We cannot have contaminated goods all over the pavement. But the investments should go down since we have a lot of machines in one spot working all the time. Next one, electric heat washers instead of house steam. It's because the house steam is quite expensive to maintain. We have some energy loss during transport. Where I come from in Halmstad, they just removed that house steam in the CCT and the hospital. House steam is mainly used for where we cook the food in the hospital and the CCT. But that is becoming less and less in reality. Some countries agree with that, some countries do not. So this is also a very local trend, but in general. And we get 10 to 20% longer process time. That is something to consider. Maybe we can solve that with automation or more machines. So this is what we have. We have automatic loaders. So we put the water cart here. It's automatic loaded to the washer disinfector. And come out the other side with unloads. Or the airbag system, where we put the wash cart on a conveyor and a shuttle goes to each machine and load it in automatically. Actually, we can have a look at that one, in case you have not seen it. Here we see the wash cart with the instrument. We put it here. This is normally very long, this one. It can hold a lot of wash cart, and the shuttle here is bringing the wash carts to the empty washers, automatically loading in. And it can even know what process it can have. It can have a scan for that. So we wash it for maybe 30, 45 minutes, depending on the program. And then we go to the packing area, and then it goes down, and the shuttle knows that and collects items. And no hands is touching here. That is fully automatic, this one. And put out on the conveyor belt that can be very long. It can be 7 meters and hold a big buffer here. So it can be buffered, and if you would go for a coffee break, it will move in. It will move out in distance. That's quite nice function. A lot of containers, more containers for the instrument. So that is for the instrument and not for your USB linen, for example. It's much more expensive to process containers. So we end up basically with mixed loads, baskets and containers. That is quite often common. And we do this because we get better protection by the container. If we have a tray with the instrument, with paper around, that might break. We even have sabotage in Sweden where some nuts made hole in the paper. That can also happen. But in general, it might break and you might need to get a new set if you find it. Otherwise, postpone that operation. The container with a filter is basically safer than the paper. And that is the reason for being more and more popular. But it is heavier and longer process time for them. So, mixed system, perhaps 3 basket bin container, we can have bin basket as well, of course. We need more washer capacity in this way, since, as you see here, the container is quite big. You can't take it into each other. The baskets here, it's probably 12 baskets here, 3 baskets that can go into each other. So very easy to wash, up to about 20 baskets in one large washer, while the container is 2 containers and it's full. So obviously it's cheaper to process the 3 baskets. The tin basket cannot pile it in a good way. That's also a bit more expensive to do. And you might want the internal logistic, like getting a T-lock. If the tray contains that it's going separate, maybe the container goes in the cart washer, and the instrument is going in the washer, and they need to go together with the packing table. Then it can be good with traceability system, so it will find the correct ones that go together. And the container is more heavy, 50% heavier than the basket. So longer processing time in the sterilizer. Also a bit heavier, so maybe we need a lifting device to help the sterile store to lift up and put it on the shelf high up here. And they have a low program in sterilizer, of course. And finally, reusable linen that we see will cover the patient and the surgeon. We do that basically because the skin particles falls off all the time, and we don't want that in the wound of the patients. That's why we cover the surgeon, the nurses, and even the patient with the hole where we operate. And we have less and less reusable linen for the surgeon patient, since it's cheaper with disposable in some countries. That is probably depending on the labor cost and energy cost in the different countries. In Europe, it's almost 100% disposable. It's different in different markets, but in general, it's more and more disposable that we see here, that you basically throw it away. And if you go from reusable to disposable, it's actually 30 to 40% of the sterilizing capacity in here. The reusable units. That's a huge amount of the sterilizing. We will actually free up sterilizing capacity if we do that, and even free up that room, the reusable linen. That space is available for other items, larger key materials. That's also something to consider. We continue, no break. Then I have one nice hospital in Sweden, Örebro University Hospital. We had some customers that was in Sweden and visited many places. They were in Copenhagen and looked at that CSD and Lund, but they really liked this place the best. Very nice CSD with a very active old manager that is now retired. She's basically implemented all these trends that we discussed earlier. And this is again support function that we saw earlier with the offices and staff rest. And here is the production. So no sales guys here, no coffee up here, that we do here and in the office. So integrated dryers in the washer. Here we have a large washer with airline system. Central dosage, we pump it out in the washing cart washer. We serve some sterile store, the sterilizers that HPM 30 discussed. Separate vacuum pumps, that's interesting. For sterilizers, very popular in some places of the world. You move out the noise from the sterilizers. The pumps is moved out to a separate room that is accessed from the corridor. And you don't hear this noise in the packing area. You will see a photo of that in a few slides. And support functions again, outside. And we continue, this is the packing area by the way. Cart washer, they do it with the trolleys. They also have sound absorbing barrier, that is a sliding windows. We see a photo of that. Next slide. Basically, we don't hear the noise from the washer in the packing area and the sort area. So we have a sliding window that we close, and only for the loading spots it's a bit open. There is a closing hatch anyway. This is the best thing that it was in Lund in Sweden. The head nurse, she said that is the best thing they ever done in their CSD. This change of having these windows. So you don't have the noise here. The vacuum pumps you move away there, the sterilizer. And here we don't have the noise from the washer that is a bit, when you're drying process especially, is a bit noisy. Even though we try to reduce the noise, it's a bit noisy. It's a nice working environment basically. In a return chamber, we return the wash cart back to the soil zone. We have height adjustable tables, so we can stand up working when we like to be. We are made for walking, not sitting really, since we are people from a long time ago. Our backs is not really built to sit actually. And traceability system with a barcode scanner, so we can scan that and know exactly where things are. Automation, both washers and sterilizers. And side-mounted operator panel. You see a photo of that. Basically, when you have a loader that push the cart on, you need to push to the side like that. But if you move out the standard panel to the side, you can just push it in front of you instead of this is in the way otherwise. We will see that photo of that. When we enter the packing area, we have a sluice here, interlocking doors, so we have a push button, so we can open with the floor, in a nice way. Very hygienic, we don't need to touch anything. We have a key card here to enter the whole CCSD. So if we are not CCSD staff, we cannot enter. It's not possible. We need to swipe the card to be able to go into this area. Here's the soil zone, red floor, as we always do in our 3D. It's obvious what is soil and what is not soil. So here we can sort the items. They have the sinks, ultrasonic parts. If we rotate, we see the washer barrier, large washers here, with airline system that we saw earlier, with the shuttle that goes insideways. We see these folding doors here, the windows, glass windows, so we don't hear the noise. We have a sluice, two windows that goes down, so we can keep the pressure difference. Here is a photo of it. So here we put the trolley with the wash cart, load it in like that, and here is the empty wash cart coming back from the back here, the inspected item. And here is within these sideways, the shuttle goes like that, and here's the windows or doors. So here's the washers. Now we're standing in here. And here's the nurse's bypassing. Maybe she had an emergency thing. Maybe something very emergency need to be washed. She can stop the whole process and open the door and load number 2 if that is empty. You can manually do that. And also for cleaning purpose, we can clean there easily when we slide away with those. Cart washer for the trolleys and for the containers in this big rack here. CMS, the central dosage you get comes out in this spot. Trolleys are height adjustable, so when we're gonna load the basket, we can do it in one spot, and we can take the trolley down, and we can work like that, and not up here. It's very heavy. So this is the packing area. A photo of that with a very low trolley, where we load the baskets here in a low position. And we have windows, as we discussed earlier. So we have good sight to this area that we can look out. Packing tables, sealers, we have some printers, they have the T-lock system, the traceability with barcodes here as well. Sterilizer barrier, side-mounted operating panel, we have automatic loaders, so we put that so we can easily push in front of us and not like in the side like that. And here is the vacuum pump that we moved out here, that we also can see in this picture. So they are completely moved out, and we don't hear the noise anymore in the CCSD room. Separate room, positioned out here, away from the CCSD corridor. So this is how it looked, the installation of the CCSD here. Electric cabinets. So the vacuum pumps, they can be moved out, but it must be in the same floor level in adjacent insulated room. So this is just nearby. This is actually, here is the vacuum pumps. This is top view. So next to the sterilizer we have this room functionality. And it can only be 20 meters maximum, not more. Then we can't keep the pressure in the vacuum pumps. So it cannot be too far away from the furthest to here. So this is obviously less than 20 meters here. So that's a quite clever way to keep down the noise. And finally, sterile store. And this is not much of a sterile store, and it isn't actually. In this place, they deliver direct to the customers. They just have trolleys and they take it away to separate storage. This is still 580 beds, but tiny sterile store. That's the reason. That they don't store anything here, just products, and go out directly. Service from the sterile, on the unloading side. We have a service door here, stainless steel, that you can open up and service the sterilizers. Yeah, just a few slides about that before the calculation. So, when we have a project, we need to think about these things especially. Production statistics. How much do we produce today? That can be how many trays, or even better, maybe a basket do we produce. And then that can be given to the designer, and he can check with the calculations. In our calculation tool, we can check and see how many baskets our tool say, and we can compare the figures that's given from the customer. And plan for the future, very important. Do we plan to increase maybe 30% in 5 years? Then it's easy to calculate that, to make two calculations, one for today, one for tomorrow. Increasing the need 30%, and we see how many machines. Probably we have one more washer, one more sterilizer, even maybe one more cloth washer. Then we add that on the drawing. Future, we make a hole, not a hole in the wall, and we just take out cut out the hole very easily in the future to save a lot of time. We don't need to shut down the CCD so long time, and just purchase that machine, and then we can go on very quickly. It's very important to plan ahead and think for the future. Can save a lot of money and time. Linen inspection, very important. Is it reusable or not? Staff rest, needed or not? Offices, maybe 1, 2, 3. All the customers have different needs in a system. There is no correct or not correct way. Staff change can also differ a lot. 1 or 2 staff change room, or even none. They might change in the basement or some other part of the CCD. So what do we need to plan for in the CCD as a designer? Sterile store is that of the CCD or user site. Like the previous sample, there was no sterile store in the CCD that wasn't there, then we don't need to plan for that. And location, maybe the most important, side by side, the OR or the elevator. So we don't need that TCSU. And if we have a cart pusher, we want to make a pit for that, to have for the water here. Otherwise, we will need a ramp. In the bottom of a cart pusher, normally we need water to collect. And we don't want to have a ramp to go up to the wash cart as a customer. So can we make that hole or not? And sometimes even maybe one part of the CCD is possible and one part is not possible because the concrete height is different, might be different in different spots. So that's something to consider for sure. And what kind of basket do we have? We use basket or containers. We use the beam system, or the spree system, or the ISO system, or the other. And also what kind of containers we use, that beam container or some kind of other US container. This is affecting the depth of the sterilizers to be optimized. So depending on the system, we choose different depth of the sterilizer. And even the washer can also be different depth between if it's dim or spree or ISO. So that is affecting a lot, and also the trolleys that we take out to the OR. If that is made the containers or the spree basket or dim baskets. So, shall we have open trolley or closed trolley? Or maybe both? This is quite common to the OR, quite cost efficient. They are a bit more expensive, but you can lock them, the closed one, and we can go outside with them. Do we have a trolley maybe in the basement that drives these ones and hook it together? If you have a truck, we need a closed transport trolley that is made in super CCD. And if we have a card pusher, what size do we need to have? That is optimized on what kind of trolleys we have, so we can fit even number of trolleys. So we can check that is correct size card pusher. And low temperature is a very hot topic for everybody, I think. Everybody has questions about that, opinions about that. It's not obvious, but there is 3 techniques right now. We have the plasma technique, we have the LTSF, low temperature steam and formaldehyde, or we have the ETO technique. And that affects the second barrier, the sterilizing barrier. If we have the formaldehyde, it's just to add 183 millimeter sheet metal and a bottle of formaldehyde, and we can switch it to normal sterilization. If we have the plasma, we need to add another machine in this barrier, and we can only use that for low temperature sterilization. And if we have ETO, that is probably the worst of all in a way, because then we need a separate room. It's explosive, it's very long process times. So then we really need to plan for this room that should have a certain volume and outlet. And preferred, it should be close to the outer wall so we can get out the air easily.
What's the thing out? Air?
The air, so we can get the air out of the room. In the ET, yeah, the exhaust, like we see here, the exhaust is coming out here from the sterilizer room. So we need, it's preferred to have the ET room close to the wall, so we can easily get it out. We have a high building, we probably need a far out, maybe 10 meters. I need to, I'm not good in the technique exactly, but it needs to go out to be let out this air in a good way, a good ventilation in this condition with the ETO. But exactly if it's what kind of air I'm not certain about. But it's a certain cubic meters there. Sorry? Yeah. The reason for having low temperature sterilization is that we have some items that is heat sensitive, and we cannot have steam, hot steam in that temperature. So then we need to have a different technique for these items, like it can be rubber, it can be endoscopes if we sterilize that is normally not sterilized. But then we need to have a different technique than a normal one. And then we have to have one of these techniques. And we have to choose one of the techniques in the CCST. And that is affecting the second barrier where the sterilizer is off. Yes, it will damage the instrument. Some instruments are damaged by the quite high temperature that the steam sterilization is doing. So in the normal sterilizer, you cannot sterilize some items. In this case, it's endoscopes, it's rigid endoscope. That cannot go in there. It must go in the ETO with the TSF or the plasma. These instruments.
Inside the machine, no problem, but
yeah, it will be damaged since we have a certain hot temperature in the sterilizer that we push in, and that's not possible. That's why normally most CCST need some kind of low temperature sterilization. There's a matter of choice here. And finally, how do we need, in my department, how many machines are we having? How many washers, sterilizers, card washer, how many people are we need? We have made this optimizer tube that we use for some time. We have had it, this kind of tool we have had probably 10 years, but this one is 1 or 2 years old now, this new half-type plate one. New thing with this one is that we can have the basket and containers. We can see that everything. So questions. If we go from 8 to 10 hours, what will happen? How many machines will we go down with? We need less machines. How many people is needed in the different areas we can tell, and so on. So this is the first page. We actually just put down the menu. How many surgeries per year is the key factor today we consider. So say we do 16,000 surgeries a year. That works per surgery.